Welcome back. And so it's time now to talk party politics, as the practice and health of it has direct and indirect bearing on the economy. And so joining us on this conversation is former federal legislator and, of course, APC chieftain. Senator Shehu Sani joins us on the program. Good morning, Senator Sani. Very glad to have you. This conversation has been long in coming. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And so we're spoiled for choice, Jeffrey and I, this morning. But maybe congratulations on Commander of the Order of the Niger is appropriate at this time. We've been reading that you have listed northern politicians who participated in the June 12 struggle, but we haven't quite had your reaction to being named on the June 12 honors list. Would like to have that. And also this flurry of conversation on who participated in what during June 12, and some people's comments being tagged as revisionism and all of that. Would like you to react to that, sir.
Well, first of all, since the return of democracy 26 years ago, this is the first time in the history of this country where a president coming from that background of the struggle appreciated the sacrifice made by Nigerians in that struggle to emancipate our country from military dictatorship. It is a fact of history that this democracy that has lasted 22 years was a product of struggle and sacrifice of many Nigerians. Many died in the process, some went to jail, and some were forced into exile. So it wasn't just the decision of the military to hand over power, but there was a struggle and a battle that was waged. There was blood that was spilled. There were people who lost their life. There was freedom that was lost before this democracy came into place. But unfortunately, for all this period of time since democracy was restored, we have had series of presidents, including even the one that went to jail, which was Obasanjo. Never for one have they thought that they should go back, or look back and appreciate that very moment in the history of our country. So the award being conferred on us is not particularly about us, but it is about that June 12th. It's about those who at that very time took the risk of sacrificing their lives and freedom for this democracy. And also, when you see this kind of thing happen, it is more of an encouragement on Nigerians to make sacrifices, and also an encouragement on those still in the field of activism, that democracy can only be protected when people can speak the truth, stand for justice, and be ready to make sacrifices. So that is, to me, that is what I think is all about. And if that was done, at least the younger generation, many people who were born after 1999, will now look back and see that maybe what they are taking for granted was something which others have sacrificed their lives for. So to me, that is my own understanding on the award and also on the struggle. Secondly, I have had some controversies coming in from the former governor, who is a brother and a friend of Jigawa State, Sule Lamido, and the sitting president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, which you raised on the issue of revisionism. But to me, you see, you can divide June 12 into two. The first is the election, and the second was the resistance. There was no doubt about it. Sule Lamido a progressive politician, a socialist that he used to be, a man of the people. He was a chieftain and a leading figure in campaigning, in working for Abiolah's victory in 1993. Not for the likes of Shehu. Abiolah could not have won places like Kano and many places in the northern part of Nigeria. He was a key figure in that aspect, and history should be kind to him, and he must be appreciated in that aspect. But you see, the second aspect of June 12 was the resistance. When June 12 was annulled, the political class were divided. Some decided to align themselves with Abacha, and some decided to fight for the mandate. And that is where Bola Ahmed Tinubu came in. And there is no doubt about it. The contribution of Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the struggle for the restoration and revalidation of June 12 mandate is unequal and unparalleled by anybody in the political realm. Because at that very time, in fact, the first time I met him was in the sitting room of Chief M.K. Abiola. Me and Dr. Beko, late Dr. Beko and Frederick Fashion. And we were all in that place strategizing on how to mobilize a national resistance and a national protest at that very era. Tinubu played a pivotal role in triggering a national uprising that gave birth to the recognition of June 12 decades after. So you can say he has not served in Abacha's government. He was also an elected senator, if I can remember. And all the right groups that existed at that very time, the pro-democracy groups, were all organizations that he has supported and directly or indirectly funded to spark up that national struggle. So I knew that at this present time there are political differences between Sule Lamido and Tinubu, but the role which was played by the two of them is clearly stated in history. Lamido played a role in Abiolah's victory, but he was absent in the resistance. And as far as the resistance was concerned, Tinubu was in the forefront of that resistance for the realization of June 12 mandate. Tinubu was in touch with student union, academic staff union of universities, labor organization, pro-democracy groups, and so many things. He triggered it and supported it. So it's a fact, and if there is anything which is so evident is this, and people from democracy side knows this thing about it. You can ask Falana, if Gani was alive, he could have also been a testimony to this, and then others who are still alive, Lisa Abakova, Sylvester Odion Akain, Wole Soyinka, and many who are in the academics today. Erubami, who was the chairman of Campaign for Democracy, Shehu Mayegun, who was then a student union leader, were all alive. These are people who can testify to the stewardship of Tinubu in the struggle. So it's not something anybody can take it away from him. Even I can remember a year ago, I said it before him, when I was raising issues on the issues of people who are still in prison for the NSAS protests. And I said that as someone who has supported, funded, and participated in protests, you should have a government that is tolerant to protestations and objections like this. So that is my own knowledge of what happened. There are people who actually fought for Abiola to be elected into president, but they were not there during the resistance. And there are people who were in the resistance and were not there when Abiola won the election. For example, let me take an example. The person who is now the Deputy Senate President, Jibrin Barrow, he was there during the campaign. They were the ones who are the ground soldiers that worked for Abiola, but he was not known in the struggle. The governor of Kaduna State, my brother and friend Sani, was a leading figure in. I and him were virtually the most prominent activists in northern Nigeria who have made. When I was arrested, he was the one who has been beaten and tortured, dragged from one cell to another. At a certain time, I lost touch with him because he too can't sleep in his house for all this period of time. And then in the north, we have the like Balare Musa, Dr. Bala Usman, and Colonel Abubakar Dangi Umar, who have played a major role, and others which I have listed in my ex post sometimes.
All right, Senator.
So this is a fact of history. I know when people differ in political term at this, they can say so many things, but it is not true to say that Tinubu has, in one way or another, worked with Abacha. It's not true.
All right, Senator, we'll move away from the issue of June 12 for a moment, because there are certain things you look at. It looks like there may never be a time where all parties will agree. Depends on what vantage point you were to see the entire picture. Some have said there are people who supported, some have said there are people, like you said, there was a people who were part of the resistance and the others who were part of the emergence. And it's just a potpourri of everybody's role one way or the other in that mix. And in fact, there is even the mix that says some people are pretending to be part of the struggle, where they are actually in bed with the dictator, Sani Abacha. But moving away from there, we had a conversation with Babafemi Ojudu yesterday, who was a veteran journalist as well as a former senator. One of the things he said was that given the role the president has played, the president has to sit up, those were his words, to protect this democracy, citing the issue of free speech. I think that's citing the issue of, I remember, security, so that we don't get to hear what happened in the 90s. When you hear such remarks, what do you make of it? Because people have, he's not the first person to say the president has been at the vanguard of fighting to help restore democracy with all the people within his lieutenant and other people who were ahead of him as well. He has to do something to protect this democracy. Why do you think that perception is there, that it's not doing enough for the people who see it that way?
Well, with all due respect to the distinguished senator, I've had a lot of comments from people. There is even someone that I have read, he said that human rights is worse under President Tinubu than it was under General Abacha. I've heard someone who said that Nigeria is into a tyranny now and people are freer under military rule. But you see, I don't think there is anyone in the course of the struggle for democracy that have stayed so long in prison than myself. And Abacha ruled Nigeria for 5 years, and I spent the 4.5 years of his government, or 4 years and some months of his government, in jail. And it's not that it's just a detention or a decreased detention. We were actually taken to a military tribunal, charged for treason, and sentenced to life imprisonment. My sentence and that of Dr. Beko was reduced to 15 years. Well, that is my own personal history. Well, I'm just giving you a brief. So, for someone who comes from this background and knowing fully well all that happened in that struggle, I think those who are trying to compare what is happening today with military rule, I think they are being economical with the truth, are not being fair, are not properly grounded in terms of being objective to them, and fair to their own opinion. First of all, you know, for those of us who were there, it was virtually impossible to even organize a conference and discuss politics under Abacha. It is virtually impossible to organize protests, whether it is peaceful or anything, under military rule. Many people were taken and deposited in jail, whether they are student union activists, whether they are human rights activists, whether they are academics or journalists, unionists, trade unionists, and just even any person who dare utter a word. And you are not just taking, but you are being backed. Your presence in the prison is being backed by a decree. And you don't go to court easily and get an order that you should be freed. This is some of the prices that we have to pay. And they can just come to your house, pick you up for what you have said, and then from there, nothing will be heard about you. And remember, in the process, there are people who were also killed. And it's just recently that I got some names of some persons whom personally too I never knew, that they lost their life during the struggle. And many who were unknown figures went to jail, but because they are not prominent, so they have actually, their own contribution remains unknown in history. So for those of us who went to jail, for those of us who were forced to exile, for those of us who lost our dear loved ones in that struggle, when we listen to people who will comfortably sit down in their sitting room and try to say that this is a dictatorship, we simply laugh at it. So
Senator Sani,
I don't think what you're saying is true.
So for someone who has impeccable, who many of you argue has impeccable democratic credentials, given his role in the June 12 struggle, how do you then reconcile this with his imposition of a state of emergency in Rivers State, the continuing stifling of the civic space under this administration through Cybercrime Act, and in fact we can also cite the extension of the service year of the young lady who you know, talked about the difficulty in the economy?
Well, Mandela was in jail for 27 years, and by the time he took over the leadership of that country after the liberation struggle, he found out that as a leader, he has to respond to issues of governance differently from the way he responds to it as a freedom fighter. There are instances where actually you can say these are breaches of fundamental rights of citizens. But in principle and institutionally and as a system, you cannot say that what we have today is worse than military rule. People still post messages and they sleep in your houses. You can't organize any press conference in Kano, Kaduna, Lagos, or Kaduna, or Abuja without 24 hours you being seen DSS in the premises of your house or coming there to disrupt it. This was how we came from. As you see me here, I wore a handcuff and a leg chain on my hands for many months. I was there when Ken Sariwa and his colleagues were executed in Port Harcourt prison. This was some of the experiences we had. So what you have here is that, for example, in the case of River State, yes, it's a fact. The popular opinion is that a president should not have declared a state of emergency, and or even if he has did it, he shouldn't remove an elected leader. But it's a matter of trying to find a solution and giving a space for them to dialogue within themselves. And the state of emergency, I believe, is going to expire by September. So Fubara, to me, should return back to the seat if possible. But there are issues, of course. People protest and they are still arrested, but the arrest is not like the one that happens under military rule, where you disappear forever, or you have there's a possibility of you being killed there. So expression of opinion in many times, not only at the federal level, but even at the state level, is still very, and at local level is still very risky. If you look, there is something which I even want to draw your attention to. Go through Twitter, which is now X, and Facebook. You will see that people are more comfortable criticizing or opposing the president than either opposing their state governors, legislators, councillors, or local government chairmen. Because a local government chairman, a councillor, member House of Reps, and state assembly knows you directly and knows your houses and knows your family. So you find out that people hardly post any criticism against their elected representatives and local government officials. So they go to the president, which shows that comparatively, it is safer for you to criticize the president and the National Assembly than to go after the members of your own state House of Assembly. That fear is still there. But it's still a transition. Our democracy is still evolving. I think, for me, I can say that it is not yet 100% a free and democratic country, but we are very far away from where we come from. And even developed democracies today, you can see what is happening in the United States. There's a new policy today in the US that says that the content of your social media post will be used to judge whether you can be given a visa or not. And even democratic nations there was recent statistics that said there are so many people who have been arrested and charged to court for posting in the UK than any other democracy. So it's not peculiar to Nigeria today. So you can't say that we have 100% democracy and 100% protection of fundamental rights, but we are very far away from where we come from, and we can do better from here.
All right, Senator Sani, great point you've raised. You know, we practice constitutional democracy, and you're a lawmaker, so you can understand where people are coming from. Because sometimes these things are not as difficult as we make it look when you just look at the books. Although we know there are encumbrances that are not visibly obvious that could play out in certain scenarios. But like the issue of Rivers State, as far as the issue of removing elected officials, it's not in our constitution. Sole administrator is not in our constitution. So it just gives you, for those of you who were active, I was a teenager in the days of the military, so I have a feel of it. Sometimes it's very scary to hear some of the things and see some of these things that happen. But you can see why people are raising concern that the constitution is very clear. So if it's a lacuna that the constitution did not resolve, you can't resort to self-help, whether governor or president in that sense. But where I'm going to with that is, I want you to speak to also the issue of this constant accusation against the president that is responsible for the distortions in political parties. Some have said this is not the first time we're having opposition, but this level of distortion in politics. In fact, yesterday, INEC chairman met with the PDP and said, I am not your problem. Who is your national secretary? That's in essence what he was saying. And so on one hand, people are saying Ayahu and the Wike elements are the mole in the APC, in the PDP. Wike's people are saying, no, you want to destroy the party. Now we have problem in the SDP as well. You already are familiar with the crisis in the Labour Party. The NMPP also has its own problem. It looks like everywhere is in chaos. Now the APC as well has had it. So I would like you to speak to this accusation of the president being behind opposition distortion on one hand. On the other hand, the issue around this vice presidential slot that the Northeast have started agitating for. I don't think they just woke up to start agitating. What do you think happened that they started agitating? So two questions in one as we want to wrap up.
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate that the opposition in the country are looking up to the president to solve their problems. How logical it is when you have a problem in your house, then you start blaming your neighbor or your adversary for it when you should address it. If there is a problem in the PDP, it is for the PDP to solve. There's a problem in NMPP, it's for the NMPP to solve. Is there a problem in Labour Party or SDP? It's for the SDP and Labour Party to solve. I don't know whether they are also trying to ask the president to come to their party and solve their problems. If you are in the PDP and you have people working against your party, you refuse to suspend them, you refuse to expel them, and then you decided to focus on the president as being responsible for your problem, I think you are simply being irresponsible. If you are in the SDP and you have crisis in your party and you don't fix it, and then you are looking for the president or blaming the president, trying to find a scapegoat for your problems, I think you are just not serious. So, to me, As a president from a ruling party, he cannot be seen trying to fix a missile or a gun that will be directed at him. It is part of a political strategy to ensure that your adversary has so much problem within his own area that he will not be able to contend. It is not something that is hidden. If you are a politician and you want to contest elections, you need to know more about your opponent. Even in football, it happens. If Nigeria is playing Tunisia, Tunisia can send spies to know how Nigeria plays its football and then see how it can strategize to win. It's all part of politics. PDP, SDP, NNPP, Labour Party should fix their internal problems and stop looking towards the president to come and solve their problems. So that is that. And if they do that, they will now play the role as a functional opposition. If you look at the opposition today and compare the one we have in 2014, you see you don't have that common resolve, common spirit to confront a government and evict it out of power. Most of the people that paraded themselves today as opposition are people who are part and parcel of the system and were simply frustrated. You can see the former governor of Kaduna State. All his utterances is not about the country, it's not about the government, it's simply about his personal frustration and the failure that comes out of his sense of entitlement. He was dropped as a minister, and since then, he's so frustrated that each time he had the opportunity, he targets the president and repeats the same thing he has always been saying. But for those of us from Kaduna, we know that no matter the problem of today, we will not justify the evil with such a personality when he had the opportunity to do things better and he failed to do it. So when you have a group of disgruntled elements who are frustrated and they come together, so it's not about the country, it's not about the people, it's simply about them being excluded from the system. Because the people who are now in the opposition, it's not that they philosophically differ from Tinubu. The issue is that it's not about they are now Marxist or trade unionist against a capitalist neoliberal order. They are all from the same political bourgeoisie elite class, and that they are simply excised out of power. And now they use every opportunity to weaponize our challenges and to present themselves as a better alternative. Well, but many of them have been in power since 1999. There is one who was, for example, you have been in power for almost 18 years, either as a minister or as a governor or as a senator or whatever. And now you come to say there is insecurity, there is hunger in the country, when you had the opportunity to do better and you failed to do it. So that is my own take on that aspect. I can't remember your last question.
Well, I believe that you've pretty much covered it, Senator Sani. And sending spies to study one's form of play, I'm just wondering if that is not another form of anti-intra-party activity. But let's move on to Kaduna politics. Just a bit of it, your reactions to what is playing out there. The president describing former administration as toxic, and then the government, carpeting the former governor for saying that some of the projects commissioned were his own legacy projects. How does that impact on, Kaduna politics, particularly as it has to do with, as we approach 2027? In about 2 minutes, sir.
Well, first of all the projects that the president commissioned were Obasani's successes in office in the last 2 years. The most important success which Obasani has been able to achieve is uniting the Muslim northern part of Kaduna and the Christian part of Kaduna. When the former governor was in office, he institutionalized a system of apartheid where the people of the southern part of Kaduna were treated as outcasts and were treated with disdain. They were institutionally marginalized and ostracized out of the system. That is what Sani has been able to do to build bridges between the two. So that becomes a solution to the toxic politics which came. Now, the person who was making those utterances, when he was in power, he borrowed so much money that elevated Kaduna to the second most indebted state in the country and left a litany of uncompleted projects in all parts of the state, with burdens to pay, contractors going to court, getting garnishing order on Kaduna State. If not for the intervention of the president to save Kaduna State, there will never have been even enough money to pay salaries in Kaduna State. This man ruled Kaduna with the most vicious and irresponsible strategy as a governor. He destroyed the homes of innocent people. He sacked civil servants without paying them their entitlement. He sacked teachers after repeated tests and exams that were all meant to punish them. He unleashed a regime of evil in the state to the point that he initiated a process of using financial issues to solve banditry, which now became the seed of the problems that we are facing in northwestern part of Nigeria today. All the progress, in fact, the president even never had the opportunity to go to other rural areas. We have 23 local governments in Kaduna. All that the former governor has done is simply 40% part of Kaduna, which is in the northern part of Kaduna North. Right. So if you are a visitor to Kaduna, you move from the airport, you are coming to Kaduna North, and within those enclaves, there were renovations and constructions that happened for 8 years. So you will think that that is the whole Kaduna. You need to go out and see the rot that was left behind. We are very much glad that Sani is our governor today, and he is doing the work which we are all proud of. And we, the House of Fulani, northern part of Kaduna, we are now living in peace and harmony with the Christian in southern part of our state. And that should be attributed to the style of leadership of Sani, which he was able to build that bridge. And we are very much grateful for that. All right.
And we're sure that spokespersons of the former governor and indeed the former governor himself will have contentions to that, and we're ready to take on their contentions. But we must thank you very much for coming through at this point, Senator Shehu Sani, former federal lawmaker and, of course, APC chieftain. Thank you for your time and thoughts on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And so from this point, we'll take a break. When we return, we'll look at the developments in Nollywood and, of course, the contributions of the Directors Guild of Nigeria to the Nollywood space. So stay with us for this next one. We'll be right back.